28 crime scene photos from history's most notorious serial killers. Richard Speck pictured is one of the 8 nurses murdered by serial killer Richard Speck as she is taken away on a gurney, July 1966. Speck's mass murder spree lasted one night when he broke into a community hospital and killed every student nurse there he could get his hands on. When asked why he'd done it, he merely remarked, "It just wasn't their night." Ted Bundy. These tools were discovered in the back of Ted Bundy's VW Beetle on August 21, 1975. He was arrested after this discovery and charged with murder, but he managed to escape custody twice and kill several more women, including 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. He would eventually confess to killing upwards of 30 women and girls. The skull of Ted Bundy's 9th victim, Denise Naslund, discovered by 2 hunters near Issaquah, Washington. Dean Corll. Workers at a boat stall dig for the victims of serial killer, Candy Man Dean Corll on August 9, 1973. The skull lying in the wheelbarrow, pictured here, was identified as Dean Corll's 10th victim, Randall Lee Harvey, who vanished from the streets of Houston on March 11, 1971. Over 2.5 years, Corll and his 17-year-old accomplice kidnapped, raped, tortured, and killed upwards of 28 young men and boys. San Augustine County Sheriff deputies, Robert McCroskey and Charles Martin, display torture devices found at the cabin of Dean Corll's parents on August 15, 1973. Trevor Hardy. The body of 17-year-old Wanda Scala, a victim of Trevor Hardy, aka the Beast of Manchester, is recovered from a construction site in 1975. Scala was killed while walking home from a hotel where she worked as a barmaid. Hardy hit her over the head with a brick before robbing and raping her. She was one of 3 of his victims. Peter Sutcliffe. Police searched the ground behind the home of Peter Sutcliffe, aka the Yorkshire Ripper, in Bradford, UK following his arrest, January 9, 1981. For the better part of a decade, Sutcliffe terrorized the women of Yorkshire, killing at least 13 with a hammer, a knife, or a stone stuffed into a sock. John Wayne Gacy. Investigators carry the remains of a body found beneath the garage floor of John Wayne Gacy, the Killer Clown, December 22, 1978. For 6 years, Gacy kidnapped, raped, and murdered upwards of 30 boys under the guise of a performing clown named Pogo. When he was finally caught, 29 bodies were found under his house. The body of another one of Gacy's victims is removed from a crime scene. Cleveland torso murderer. Detectives and coroner S. Gerber examined the bones of 2 victims of the Cleveland torso murderer, otherwise known as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury, August 16, 1938, in Cleveland, Ohio. For 4 years starting in 1934, the Cleveland torso murderer killed, dismembered, and castrated 12 different victims. The killer was never identified. Edmund Kemper. The head of one of serial killer Edmund Kemper's victims is dug up by Santa Cruz County Sheriff's deputies on April 26, 1973. These remains were discovered in a grassy patch beneath Edmund Kemper's bedroom. The 6 feet 9 inches killer with an IQ of 145 had already murdered multiple people by this point, including his mother and her best friend, before turning himself in. Serial killer Edmund Kemper shows police officers around one of his crime scenes. Using Kemper's direction, detectives unearthed the remains of his victims.